There's something in the air in New Japan Pro Wrestling. This King of Pro Wrestling show from Sumo Hall feels like it could be a pivotal one for the company, with 7 title matches, a special challenge, and a silver anniversary match on the card. There's still plenty of events before Wrestle Kingdom. There are a pair of tag team tournaments still to come, and Historic Crossover 2 is in there also. But this feels like a show that could tell us a lot about New Japan's future. Is this the beginning of the Zack Sabre Jr. era, or will New Japan hold on to its Naito-shaped security blanket? With Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. This is Speaking of Strong Style. Welcome, everyone, to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. We're contributors to the Fight Game Network, and just wanted to get into this whole King of Pro Wrestling thing. We had the Blue Justice show this past week. It was a Yuji Nagata promoted show in Chiba, and Yuji was in the main event, and it was an entertaining show. It wasn't the most consequential thing. It kind of felt like a house show, but as that card went on, Jeremy, it made me realize this King of Pro Wrestling show, which it was previewing, like most of the matches on Blue Justice were multi-person tags that had to do with an upcoming match at King of Pro Wrestling. This is just a big one. This card's loaded. It feels important, and it feels like we're going to know a lot about what the company thinks is its direction and where it thinks the next phase of its run is going to be as we head up to Wrestle Kingdom. It just feels very consequential to me. Did you have that feeling this week as we watched Justice and now we're heading into this one?
I mean, I felt this way for a while. I mean, when they announced the card last week, I was like, hot damn, this is the most stacked show since Dominion, even if maybe even more stacked than Dominion. I don't know, but it is legitimately stacked. And going down the line, you feel like you know who's going to win all of these matches. But even if you don't know who's going to win, each one has kind of its own pivot point in which you can do a lot depending on who wins each of these matches. So I'm really excited. It feels like New Japan has been cooking for a while, and this is the show that come next Monday afternoon, next Tuesday, conversations will be had.
Yeah, and we wanted to go into the King of Pro Wrestling show match by match, which we're going to do very shortly. There are a couple of other notes and things we wanted to mention here first, but it really wasn't until and Colin is here. Colin, good to see you. He brings up something, and Benkin's here also. Good. But Colin just said, where the heck are they getting 7 title matches from? Yeah, they've managed to put together just an absolutely full card here. So each one, they're definitely going for a big, trying to get a big attendance thing going here. It's a bank holiday in Japan. So it's a 3-day weekend type of thing. And they have a Monday show at Sumo Hall. That's going to be when it takes place. It just feels like they're really trying to load this thing up. Now, I mean, the first match on the card, I don't know if we're going to get a dark match, but the first match listed on the card, for the love of God, is Hiromu Takahashi versus Mistico. That's opening this thing up.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. All right. A couple of things to mention, too, by the way. This past week, we talked about Clark Connors getting involved in a Stardom show to start setting up Historic Crossover. We had another moment in that at Nagoya where Stardom had a pay-per-view on this past weekend, and I watched all but 2 matches of the show. It was pretty good card overall. And the Great Okan came out at the Stardom show and said that he is going to lay out an open challenge for the King of Pro Wrestling title to anyone on the Stardom roster at Historic Crossover. So who on earth knows what they're going to come up with that one? Okan, of course, has had eating contests, wacky stipulations all through. Goodness only knows what they'll come up with this.
What was it? Hanako.
Yeah.
The tall one.
Yes.
That's the play, right?
That is, you think?
It would be a great match.
It would probably be interesting.
Yeah, I think Great Okan could do a good grapple match with, a taller female. Like, I honestly think that could work. Because him wrestling one of the smaller, you can do it, right? But there has to be like a visual, like, oh, wow, kind of moment. And if you have like a Stardom wrestler that has the same like imposing presence, on the other end of a match. I don't know. That seems like I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but that seems like a good idea.
Also, by the way, in case you're wondering what the bank holiday is, this is Sports Day in Japan. It's a national holiday established in 1966 as Health and Sports Day. So when else should you have a pro wrestling card there? It's Sports Day. It commemorates the anniversary of the opening ceremony of the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. So there you go.
So I don't know how Scott E. Wrestling or Scott Edwards will react to that, but I'm going to bring it up to him next week because he is going to be your substitute as you are off in parts unknown, and he will be reviewing the King of Pro Wrestling, previewing Crown Jewel, and we'll probably talk a little bit of Stardom and Historic Over too, because I have no doubt the King of Pro Wrestling will have some news going into that event as well.
It's I said Benkin here is also mentioning Sumo Hall. Isn't Sumo Hall not one of the big venues? Yeah, it's a huge venue. It seats about 11,000. It's a big building there. And he's saying that
they do big time shows there for sure.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's in fact traditionally this was their biggest non-Tokyo Dome, most important non-Tokyo Dome arena. Sumo Hall has been the host of their big shows. All of Japan, their big shows were at Budokan Hall. Which is in a different part of Tokyo. But this was the big indoor, well, I guess the dome is indoors. You know what I mean? The arena rather than a stadium. This is their number one arena. It has been for a very long time. This is the Ryogoku Kokugikan. There have been other buildings used as Sumo Hall in Tokyo over the years, and New Japan's always booked those as some of their biggest events.
Cool. I was just checking one last thing before we kept moving on.
Venkin saying Sports Day. Can we get this as a holiday too? Yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be nice. So no. And Matthew mentions, are we forgetting that we still have Power Struggle before Historic Crossroads? Haven't forgotten
we
it. But
do.
But New Japan
we have
also
the match
hasn't mentioned
here.
it. Yeah, I was going to say we have matches for Historic Crossover. Power Struggle's barely been mentioned by the company thus far. So when they start talking about it, we will.
They're actively putting out more matches and cards. We got Power Struggle. We got Fighting Spirit Unleashed. We now have another Strong Style down in Long Beach on December 15th. Like, there are big shows that are coming, but we have no guarantee that the shows that are coming are going to be as legitimately stacked as the card that we have in front of us this week. And so I don't necessarily feel like the cards from here to Wrestle Kingdom are going to be as strong as this one. This is really
just to give you an idea, if you go to the Mickey Mouse website New Japan is using right now, the schedule doesn't even list Power Struggle on it at the moment. There is going to be a Power Struggle show, but just show you that right now it's not on their mind very much. It's not on there, let alone a match card. So when they start talking about it, we definitely will. But yeah, all right. So do we want to get into this King of Pro Wrestling preview then? Just go with that. Anything else you want to talk to before?
I mean, is there any major thing from Blue Justice that we need to cover at all, other than the 5-man Hontai versus Bullet Club was a good party match, and the TMDK and LIJ, like Ryohei Oiwa is fun to watch, and it's a great feature for him. There are definitely matches on the card that if you are trying to figure out what these guys are like, Ryohei was holding back a little bit, honestly, because his big match is coming up, but you can see these guys are ready to go. Like, the energy is there and whatever.
The only other thing that kind of spooked me a little bit was during the preview for the junior tag team titles, Kushida seemed to hurt his knee at the end of that match on a move, kind of crashed. He hit the move off the top rope, but then grabbed his knee and laid there. They sort of did the rest of the finish around him. Afterwards, while the rest of the team was, which won, were standing there kind of accepting the adulation of the crowd and posing for the cameras and things, Kushida was sitting on the apron, and the Young Lions were kind of checking him out, and then he was helped out by the Young Lions and never stood up again really in the ring on his own power, which made me very nervous. But he did wrestle at the Road to King of Pro Wrestling show in Shizuoka. These are the house shows that aren't going to go up on NJPW World. He did wrestle on that show on Tuesday. I haven't seen results from today's show, but it seems like he at least was not removed from the lineup. I don't know what he was able to do, but hopefully that was just a little bit of a scare, and he iced it down, and he was all right. But he
maybe he was just like, oh, young guy, you go take the credit. You know, like I'm good tonight. I'm good.
All right. Well, and then the only other thing, by the way, apparently, not apparently, I watched it. Daiki Nagai's promo after his match was gold. You should go back and check it out. The promo he did after the Young Lions match. I'm telling you, Yasuda and Nagai are so far advanced for what they're doing right now as far as charisma and talking ability. Both of them. They both do better promos than some of the guys on the main roster already. And Nagai's was absolutely fantastic, talking trash about the other guys in his class and all that. It was wonderful. I like this.
Okay, so what was it about? I missed it completely.
Well, I mean,
I usually don't miss it, but I did this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that, he was on the winning side. He was not involved in the fall. Bolton got the victory with a Boston Crab on Yasuda. And then afterwards, though, he was thrilled because it was the first time he'd had a victory. He'd either lost or he had been in draws with Yasuda, because they've had those guys paired off for a while. So it was the first time he gotten a win in his career, and he was feeling it. And then afterwards, he just basically trash talked all the other guys in his class there, and it was great. I mean, he just really did a good job. I don't want to sit there and try to quote him because you should go back and look.
I get it now. So he was the senior young lion of the 4 young lions, and then he just ran everybody else down, because he was on the winning side, and he's the elder of the young lions.
I think Yasuda is the eldest, though, because Yasuda was around, I think, before a lot of these guys, and he got hurt.
No, but I'm saying if he was on the winning side, he was the elder to Murashima, and so being on the winning side and the elder, he's just running everybody else down. Because they had an elder and a younger lion on both sides, and he was the winning one.
Yeah. And
Dunston
says that young lion is going to be a potential top heel in the future. Hope he's a heavyweight. Yeah, I'm telling you, if you look at the guy and you listen to him talk and you look at his facial expressions, like both he and Yasuda are ahead of Shoma and Murashima on that for sure. It's fun to watch.
And watch this promo. I'm bummed at myself. I knew there was something I was missing on like the recap this week, and I was like, I'm gonna get caught on the show. I'm like, forgot to watch the backstage.
Anyway, that was the opener there, and the backstage was all right for that. So yeah.
All right, let's jump into the preview. Yeah. Okay,
let's do that. Mistico and Hiromu Takahashi opening up. So this is just the one that's a can't miss. Mistico is in Japan and is working the Road 2 shows, which I think is really, really smart. One, it gets him just on Japan time, which is a heck of a jet lag issue. And then he also can just get used to the ring, because the ring is very different. And it's not uncommon, especially on the first night of Fantastica Mania, to see some of these lucha guys just be like, oh boy, okay, this ring is a little different. And of course it is. All rings are a little bit different. And but the New Japan ring and the Lucha Libre ring, this way he'll have a few nights of practice before going into the Sumo Hall pressure cooker with Hiromu Takahashi. Not that Mistico is worried about that. This guy performs in front of 10,000 people almost every week in Mexico City. So this is a big match performer in with another big match performer. The match can't miss. As far as who wins, who loses, matters a little bit less to me. You can do one of two things, Jeremy. You can have Hiromu win and be on a hot streak, beat the guest, and be on the warm side going into this whole thing where he's trying to get his match with Naito at the Dome and all that, and you can just have him on a roll. Or you can have Mistico win this one, with the storyline being that Hiromu needs to fight his way up there and still has a bit of a ways to go. Either one works, and Hiromu is a guy that can sell either one of those two things. He's also been working on his new submission hold to counter La Mistica, which is that arm breaker type of submission that Mistico uses as a finisher. So they're layering on the stories going into this one.
So these two have met twice before. First time went to a double pin, so there was no winner, and that was in 2023, August. At Arena Mexico at a CMLL show. They then met again in July and at the CMLL New Japan Fantastica Mania in Arena in Mexico, and Mistico won that one. So we are 0-1-1 for Hiromu right now of a potential 3-way series. I'm leaning towards Hiromu winning this, but I think, in all honesty, Steven, we're the winners. We are the winners here.
Yeah,
this
yeah, I agree with you.
This is going to be the hottest opener for a New Japan match in God knows how long, and I'm just here for it. This is just
no, I'm excited about the match. The whole point of this thing is just tear the house down. That's really the whole point.
Just set the tone. Mystico. I saw this dude wrestle at a gym in San Jose in July, and it was just like you just saw it. You just saw how good he was.
Yeah,
and I've seen Hiromu wrestle at the Cow Palace. I've seen them both wrestle in California, just not each other. Interestingly enough, but now they're going to do it, and I'm going to be able to talk about it, and all is right in the world.
Let's get to Venkin's question here. He says, "Are wrestling rings really that different?" I think that's worth exploring. Yes, they are, and they certainly can be. They're made by different people, and some of them are constructed differently. The sizes can be different.
Some have different shapes.
Well, yeah, they were using the 6-sided ring in TNA for a while, but besides that, the ropes feel different. It's what tension they bring to them. For flyers like Mistico or Hiromu, going into a different ring can be very disoriented. Even AJ Styles has mentioned that he had to kind of reconfigure how he did the phenomenal forearm when he got to WWE because the ropes feel different. In fact, that's worth mentioning alone. WWE is about the only major promotion I know of whose ropes are ropes. Actually ropes. They literally are.
Cables.
Yeah, everybody else uses steel cable with some padding around it and then tape. But that tension in that steel cable really matters. I mean, you can have a ring that you can base on and jump, and then you get to another one. If that tension is lowered, you land on that thing as you're trying to springboard, and all of a sudden you sink and you shake, and it's you got to really steady yourself. So sometimes it can take a few matches just to get used to that. Some are softer than others. The Sportatorium ring in World Class Wrestling was notoriously a concrete slab. Like that was a hard ring that they used for those TV tapings there, and other things like WWE changed their rings because the ring that Mankind crashed into. He said it was either in his book or one of his or an interview with Foley, where Mick Foley just said one of the things that brought him the most comments from people in the back was that not only did he take that massive bump through the Hell in the Cell cage, but he did it in one of the old rings. And he said Vince McMahon bumped in one of those old rings when he started wrestling, and magically they ordered new rings that were a little easier on you when you landed on them. So yes, they can be very different.
Taking bumps, that thing changed immensely for WWE. And even the tightness of the ropes, how firm they are between the ring posts. Those are all important as well because they'll adjust that depending on how much high flying or lack of high flying you want to have in the ring.
And I mentioned that the one in the Sportatorium in Dallas was a concrete slab. I was just using language there to describe it. That was being facetious there. It was a wrestling ring and all that, but it was notoriously stiff. It didn't give a whole lot. And there have been other examples of that. And I was just thinking, Lucha Libre as a whole. Let's mention that. One of the reasons that Lucha Libre looks different than American and Japanese pro wrestling, more rolling bumps, not all, but more, they train more to do rolling bumps, things like the arm drags, the Tijeras, where you do a forward roll into the ring, is that back in the very early days when they were learning how to do Lucha Libre and developing this style, they were doing some of these things in boxing rings that don't give at all. And so taking a flat back bump in a boxing ring will knock the hell out of you. It'll you can get concussions, you can knock the wind out of you. So they develop more sort of rolling bumps in Lucha Libre. The rings are different now. They aren't boxing rings, certainly. They're pro wrestling rings, but that style remains. So they can be very different from one to another. I know that when in my very, very short foray, or not short, I was doing it for a long time, but in the independence wrestling around Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee, the rings can be very, very different.
The independent scene, the whole anyone got a ring I can borrow kind of thing, where it's just kind of
I was in 14-foot wooden rings, and then like the good ones were the Mike Samples ring. That was a guy in Indianapolis that made rings. And if it was a Mike Samples ring, you're like, oh, okay, that one's not gonna kill me.
That's not gonna break my ankle trying to run the ropes and figure out how many steps I need to run the ring ropes.
Yeah, those were good. I didn't take a whole lot of bumps. I was mostly a manager.
One size does not fit all on rings whatsoever.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning. Worth mentioning.
All right, ready for the next one?
Yeah. Yes. So Kevin Knight and Kushida. I mentioned that Kushida is back wrestling after what looked like a little bit of a scare with his knee there in Chiba. It'll be he and Kevin Knight challenging Clark Connors, Drilla Maloney for the IWGP Junior Tag Team titles. Now, with the Junior Tag Team tournament coming up, this is going to tell us who's not going to win that tournament because, of course, the champions virtually never win the things. But these two have traded this title before, so they could go with it if they wanted to have a babyface go into either Power Struggle or Kingdom as the tag team champions. And they could also just leave them on Maloney and Connors with the idea of them creating a challenger for the Dome later during the tournament. So, but it feels a little bit more like a Bullet Club win just because Knight and Kushida have held it before. But these titles tend to bounce around a lot. So it wouldn't surprise me greatly if Kushida and Knight win, but I'm leaning toward the Bullet Club team here.
There are a lot of reasons why you can run this back and give them the opportunity to have Kushida and Knight win again without, maybe Bullet Club look weak to another team. But at the same time, if Bullet Club can dispatch this team right now, it elevates them from a point that they were the last time they faced them. I'm in the camp that it doesn't seem like the right time for Bullet Club to lose the titles. But at the same time, if they went in pissed off at the Super Junior Tag League, that's also kind of a fun dynamic. So, again, I don't really care who wins because we kind of win on the match and the dynamic. Kevin Knight is fantastic.
Yes, he is.
Kushida is a great ring general with years of experience. And Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney are hotter than they've ever been in their lives, and they're vibing incredibly well as a team. And they've had a few weeks off to really recover and get healthy and just refresh themselves. And this might be a statement for them that they are back and ready to be dominant once again.
And then Dunstan mentions a couple of things here that are worth mentioning. He says he has the War Dogs retaining, but he hopes there's an interesting story with the titles like last year. And he also mentions that he feels like Kosei Fujita and Robbie Eagles are the favorites for Tag League this year. Certainly, I agree that they're going to be in the mix, absolutely. Taiji Ishimori, by the way, said that we're going to be surprised when we see who his tag team partner is for the tournament. He didn't give any hints, didn't mention any other promotions or anything, but it does sound like somebody that we're not expecting to be his partner. Probably somebody coming in as a guest, but we don't know.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how interesting do you find that?
I think it was just something that he said to tease us all, just as he's looking in. It didn't feel like he was working some massive angle. It's just like I think he was just kind of giving us an idea of, stay tuned, pay attention to me, a little bit in there.
Who do you think it could be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it could be somebody from another promotion that comes in is probably the most likely. I feel like he would have played it differently were it a New Japan guy that was shocking to us.
Okay.
Because it was kind of at the tail end of a thing where he talked about his own show at Shinjuku Face coming up, and then just said, oh, and by the way, I think people are going to be surprised when they see who I'm teaming with. So it might even be somebody who's booked in both, the tag team tournament and for his show where, what is it? Ishimori Gets Ridiculous is what it's called. He's going to wrestle like 5 different matches.
I'm reserving a lot of judgment and speculation about who, what, where, why win the Super Junior Tag League. I think after this match, we might actually get a couple of announcements because that is like a good settling point of here's what's going on. A couple of people in Rev Pro might end up being in there. We don't know what's going on with Watto and Desperado and a couple of these guys might be making a return around this point. It's just really curious right now, and so this is a completely open-ended match. They can do anything at this point because these are very these titles don't mean much at the same time that they do. Like, they're representative of a division, and the people that hold them elevate them. And the War Dogs are very, very strong at elevating and defending and making these titles mean anything. But as we've seen, they've disappeared for the last 4 months and meant absolutely nothing. And they've completely disregarded any kind of storyline whatsoever because it wasn't germane to the heavyweight division or anything like that. So the illusion of importance to this title just says that it is a prop for the entire division, like everything else is. And right now the division is about to go into overdrive with hopefully 8 to 12 other tag teams vying for it. And the War Dogs and both these teams, frankly, are going to be the top contenders going to the very end.
I'm curious to see where Desperado is in his recovery. We know he's coming back. He feels like he's coming back November 17th because he and Starlight Kid are teaming up against Zack Sabre Jr. and Micah at Crossover. We know that, but we don't know if he's going to be ready for the tag team tournament or is just ready to have that many matches again. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah,
we
there's
don't.
Yo as well, and there's a couple. There's a bunch of people out there that are just question marks, and until those question marks are. Zane, right? Alex Zane is a guy that they could be bringing back. What if it was Ishimori and Zane?
He's been hurt too. Yeah. Well, but it's tough. TNA is working more with NXT than
I
they
don't
were.
See
so
TNA being I think
that's where they've gotten guys before.
Kind of go that way and then that way. Anyone from AEW? Top Flight, maybe something like that. I think Top Flight coming over would be a lot of fun, but I don't know. Layla Gray and Top Flight in New Japan would honestly make me laugh my ass off, but I think they would get a lot out of it.
They probably would. Yeah, they probably would. All right, next match after this one is going to be for the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team titles, and that's Mikey Nichols and Shane Haste against Bad Luck Fale and Caveman Ugg. We mentioned that this match happened because Ugg got a pin on Mikey during a New Japan Tamashii card. So that brings us to this one, mostly Aussie event. We got a Kiwi in there and Fale, but this one definitely, to me, feels like a title retention. We barely know who Caveman Ugg is. We saw him once at Blue Justice. Fale doesn't seem to be around a whole lot, but perhaps this is a team for the World Tag League or some version of that. Could be Fale and Bonza too, who knows, but some combination of those guys. But this doesn't seem like the time to switch these belts now, does it?
No, I don't think so. But at the same time, watch that this ends up being what they decide to do with the TMDK tag title and give it to Fale after years of being away. Yeah. I think this is just a warm up and an introduction to get these guys ready for World Tag League, or at least get the audience ready for World Tag League. But TMDK, Shane Haste, and Mikey Nichols, they've grinded it for so long getting to this point that I don't see them losing. And my disdain for Bad Luck Fale is really holding me back from saying what I really want to say, which is probably not kind. So I just hope that TMDK retain this match.
Colin mentions one thing. He said, well, what's with Fale and the dyed blonde beard? He said he had no clue who it was at first. My girlfriend said he was giving off Uncle Phil vibes from the Fresh Prince. He just had that big stark white beard suddenly on that thing. So it was a little disconcerting to see him like that. But yeah.
What else we got?
No, I mean, we can move on to that next one. Now we're talking about a match that I'm very curious about. So we have Shingo Takagi and Ryohei Oiwa for the never Openweight title. That's the next one on the card. And normally this one would be a lot higher up on a card, but this thing's loaded. But, Shingo could be headed to a big spot in the Dome, so he might retain here. They don't always put over guys coming back from excursion right away. We saw that with Uemura and Tsuji. The couple of times they have put over guys from excursion right away, it was Okada, Hiromu Takahashi, who are both monster stars. So I suppose if Ryohei Oiwa wins this title, comes back from excursion, not his first match, but his first major title shot, and wins the never openweight title from Shingo, we're going to get a pretty good indication what they think about Ryohei Oiwa anyway, or what they think his potential is. And if Shingo just has a great match with him and retains, it keeps things in play for that LIJ interfaction match at the Dome, or possibilities thereof, that these guys are going to end up tangling with one another after the huge triumph last year. That this year it'll be more LIJ versus LIJ instead of that united front we saw as they drove toward Naito winning the belt. So where are you leaning on this one, Jeremy? It's a tough one. I don't necessarily want to see Ryohei get beat right away, but if he has a fantastic match from Shingo and loses valiantly, it probably won't harm him too much.
I think Shingo is probably going to win this match. I look at all the other factors with all the other young lions that come back from excursion and do what they do. And I think that there is going to be a story where they're going to build him up rather than go wild out the gate. More so than anything else, if you have him win just to have him lose the title right away, I don't know what that purpose that serves. And I'm not necessarily sure Ryohei Oiwa is ready to have a title defense of the never openweight title like set up for him at Wrestle Kingdom. Yeah. I don't think we're there with him yet, but you have many, many times in the last couple weeks in the Hiroshi Tanahashi recaps that you're doing, have told the story about Goto telling someone, wow, this guy's going to be world champ one day. It's like, yeah, I'm going to put the belt on him. It's like, oh, yeah, great. It's like, no, I'm going to put the belt on him in like a week. And that's exactly what he did because there was confidence in the guy like out the gate. And I think there's something about Ryohei Oiwa that makes him a little special, different than all the other guys. Like there's just, everybody has a different kind of spark. I'm curious what New Japan sees that spark is. I think he has the opportunity to do something special, but I think this is more of a, let's put you in with Shingo. Let's see what happens. Let's see how you do, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's probably a solid. If he wins, it'll be a big step for him, of course. But perhaps the path is a little bit more with what we saw with Tsuji, a little bit more with Uemura, and this generation of guys coming back from excursion like Shota, Fujita, none of whom were launched into that kind of position immediately. Instead, I think it can do a lot of good for Oiwa if he has that fantastic match that Shingo Takagi frequently provides. Takagi can put him over afterwards and just say, I won tonight. I'm still the top of this mountain, but I recognize that we have some hungry people on the way up, and Oiwa's going to be a problem for guys like us for a long time, but I'm still on top. Put him over as he goes over on him, so to speak. So there's ways to do this in a way that won't hurt Oiwa or really have him take a back seat. And Dunstan says this is the real main event for him, Oiwa versus Shingo, the match he's looking forward to. And after seeing him in Noah and his performances there, he can definitely defend the never title at the Dome. The problem is the type of story they'll tell with him and his opponent. I think that's the point Jeremy was trying to make, is like, okay, he wins the thing. Say he wins the thing from Shingo. Then what is his story other than I'm the never openweight champion? He doesn't have a problem with anybody. And I guess somebody could just go ahead and nominate themselves as a challenger, but it feels like they could do something a little bit more with more depth than that. And having Oiwa just win the title now and say, okay, well, now he has a never openweight title match against somebody at the Dome. Okay, but it just feels like you could do something with a little deeper story to it than that. And, I think a loss here, a valiant loss here would be good.
Steven, do me a favor. I'm going to need to pull an Alvarez, and I need you to Meltzer your way through the next segment for a couple of seconds.
Yes. All right. So Jeremy's going to take a step away for just a moment. We have the World Television Title three-way match. That's going to be the next one here. So Jeff Cobb, Yota Tsuji, and Ren Narita. Now, Narita's coming off of his own injury there. His arm was a little banged up for a while, but he is ready to come back. We saw the draw with Cobb and Tsuji, so we had to run it back. And, of course, that was when Narita attacked both men and inserted himself into the narrative. I'm curious about this one for a lot of reasons. One is that Cobb, Tsuji, and Narita are all very good, but in a 15-minute match, the whole point of these TV title matches are that they are sprints. The normal structure to a three-way match is often one guy getting incapacitated, dumped to the outside, or take a big move, thus allowing two guys to kind of wrestle each other, have their own little singles match until somebody else interferes, breaks up a pin, or suddenly reinserts himself into the picture. And it becomes a series of little singles matches while one guy is kind of off and recovering until everybody's involved in the finish eventually. And you're just going to have to do that in such fast forward fashion because, you know, a good three-way match takes about 15 minutes to even get going to tell all that story and then go into the finish here. But this is going to have to be full steam ahead. The other side of this is Narita's presence really opens things up.
Does it?
Yes, it does, because they could have Narita get pinned by Tsuji, so to, you know, and the title changes, but Cobb isn't involved. You could have Cobb beat Narita, and then Yota Tsuji just going, okay, well, that's all fine and dandy, but you didn't beat me. I had the draw with you last time. I'm still in line for this thing. You could do it that way. I don't really see Cobb doing the job here.
No,
but you know, but the other ways are intriguing. You could have, you know, Narita beat Tsuji by hook and crook and win the title and get out of there. Now House of Torture has another belt as they build toward the Dome for somebody to chase. A three-way allows all of these possibilities here, and it allows Cobb to lose the belt without losing the match, which would keep him in the picture. You could have do it again, like I said, with Tsuji still in the picture. There are a multitude of ways that this story can continue by adding this three-way.
The one thing that I think is virtually guaranteed, Ren Narita is involved in whatever the end of the match is.
Sure.
One or the other. Whether it's Cobb and Narita, whether like it's Yuji Yota Tsuji and Narita at the end, or you know what I mean? I don't see it being Yota Tsuji and Jeff Cobb at the end, either one being on a pinfall with each other. The only way I could picture Cobb and Tsuji beating one another at the end is if it happened because Narita clocked the other one with the push-up bar, and then the one guy managed to get Narita out of there and take the pinfall, that type of thing. It could still be a draw, but this does seem like it's tracking to getting the belt off of Cobb
without beating him.
Yes,
cleanly, yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with this one, because if you were going to have Tsuji beat Cobb or Cobb beat Tsuji, you could just do a rematch.
Mm-hmm.
You
could be saving that. You could just be trying to fit in the Ren Narita aspect of this match because they missed time and it was supposed to happen and it didn't happen and they had to shoehorn it in. And remember, why is Yota Tsuji in the match then? So I don't know, but it feels like Ren Narita had to be here for some reason. And there's a part of me that very much thinks that he could be walking away with the TV title. Because remember, he challenged Zack Sabre Jr. to be the initial holder of that belt, and he came very close. And it would not shock me if he gets that belt as a heel sometime in the near future.
Dunstan mentions one thing, by the way. We're going to back up here a little bit. He offers one up here. Shota Umino could be a great challenger for Oiwa with a potential character change for Shota. Yep, you could absolutely do that with the never Openweight title.
I don't know about that one. I feel like Shota and El Phantasma are heading on a collision course.
Heading on that one? Yeah, that could be.
Oh, yeah.
Well, World Tag League could tell us a lot, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, World Tag League.
Oh, speaking of.
Goodness.
Shota and ELP.
Shota and ELP with teaming with Hiroshi Tanahashi against Evil Yujiro Takahashi, Yoshinobu Kanemaru. So not a trios title match. In fact, this is Tanahashi's 25th anniversary match today, but his 21st anniversary, by the way. He was in Korakuen Hall on this day 25 years ago, where he wrestled. It was Makabe, Shinya Makabe. He wasn't Togi Makabe yet. So that there's a picture of a very buff young lion Tanahashi out there with his neat haircut before he had the flowing locks, floating around out there from that very first match at Korakuen Hall. So Tanahashi's 25th anniversary match is a 6-man tag, and that is to save Tana's knees and perhaps do something angle-wise here, since his feud seems to be with Evil, and I still feel like this is going to go on for the rest of the year, maybe all the way to the Dome.
I find it absolutely fascinating that Ishii and Oleg Boltin are not on this card.
Yeah.
And they're not with Tanahashi in a match with him.
Or Yano.
Or Yano. That's right.
Who's this? He's the trios champion with Boltin.
That's right. For some reason, I thought it was Ishii. But then I thought about the greater version of it, which was Okada, Ishii, and Tanahashi.
Right.
Which made me so happy. That was a lovely time, but it was so short-lived. This just feels so like you are trying to get something set up with Shota Umino and ELP about like the future of Hontai and the leadership and all these things. And I don't know, man, they're simmering with this, and the House of Torture combination that they have on the other side is not the strongest combination of House of Torture. So I'm very curious, but of all the matches that I think is a guaranteed outcome, I think Tanahashi winning in his 25th anniversary match really kind of feels like that's the direction that they need to be going with tonight.
It's possible, but we've seen a lot of House of Torture losing lately, especially in big moments, and it feels like it might also be time, and they could lose the match and then get heat. That's always possible.
Sure.
It feels like a time to come out with a little bit of heat for House of Torture somewhere, and that could be Ren Narita winning the title. That could definitely be a way to put some heat back on House of Torture, and there could be something going on here where they do something particularly nasty to Tanahashi on the night of his 25th anniversary. What a bunch of dirty bastards! You know, you could always do something like that to try to get steam rolling again, because House of Torture has just been getting kind of beat by these guys, which doesn't make for a great story there for the Dome or going forward. You know, you got to have a little bit of the bad guys getting one over on the good guys. Might be time for that.
They've essentially queued up Wrestle Dynasty, which is Tanahashi and Omega versus the Young Bucks. I feel like that's pretty much what they've got going on there. But that still leaves Wrestle Kingdom, and I think that we've got Tanahashi and Evil in a singles match with a big old circle for Wrestle Kingdom at this point. And so whatever direction they take, they got plenty of time. Like we said, we got plenty of shows. This is a presidential angle that they can draw out. It's not going to be the thing that's going to like bring in the most fans. It's not going to be the semi-main event, but this is going to be a consequential like match that they've been building up for the majority of the year. So I am excited to get to that conclusion. And if they don't do it at Wrestle Kingdom, I don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, they got to have something for Tanahashi, and they're leading us this direction. So we'll see how that one goes there. But there is another opportunity for House of Torture to get heat, and that is in the next one. And that's Doki against Sho for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. And this is one that they absolutely could have Sho cheat, win, and go on and have the chase be that somebody, whether it's Doki, whether it's anybody else, chasing Sho for that title. Could have another retention by Doki just to make him look like a more solid champion as we move toward January. I'm hoping it's a really good match, and I'm hoping Sho wrestles. We know he's very much capable of it. He gets bogged down in House of Torture shenanigans a lot, as we like to say here, the shenanigans that take away from the wrestling sometimes. But Doki versus Kanemaru was pretty good, and they have toned down a little bit of the House of Torture bump and constant run-ins. That hasn't been as prevalent in the quantities we had it before. I'm just hoping for a really good match here. If they want to put a little bit of heat on House of Torture with the victory, I'm fine with it. I like Doki as the junior heavyweight champion, so I'm rooting for a retention. But I can see New Japan's point either way.
He's kind of in a rut a little bit. What do you got?
Matthew jumped ahead of me. But since the folks in the chat can see it, he just said, could Show win the junior title to set up Yo returning for the junior title of Kingdom? Yep, they sure could. Or they also could do Master Wato, like one of those guys returning from injury.
Is that really hot, though, Show versus Yo?
You could make it that way. I'm going to take it away from you. Yeah, I mean, they could.
Here's where I was going with it before, and Matthew kind of is directed me in that, but I was going with it. Show feels like they're doing a half-hearted retread of what he was doing in the first half of the year, and that other people were doing it, taking his title and just kind of being like a little troll in the division. And they're building something with Doki right now. They're building something with him and investing in him in a way that they realize that the division is depleted because, a lot of these guys that they've been living off of for the last 6 to 8 years, they're aging out or weighing out in a lot of ways. So he's the guy, and he's been working at that level for a while. Desperado's going to be out for a while. He may just be the guy that Desperado and Doki at Wrestle Kingdom. That, to me, seems like a much more interesting matchup than Yo versus Show. Just that was an angle from years ago, and when you revisit it, I don't know if the demand for Wrestle Kingdom action is there with Roppongi. So
yeah, fair enough.
I wouldn't have a problem if Show won, because like I said at the beginning of this whole broadcast we're doing today, every match has an opportunity to go in an interesting direction heading into Wrestle Kingdom from this point on. Whether it's Doki continually upping the level of challenge of challengers, really cementing his position as the ace of the junior heavyweight division, or they want Show as the guy for a new conquering hero to come by. If that's the case, it feels like kind of a bummer that Doki was just a placeholder title holder to have some good matches in between. But that's why I don't think he's going to lose.
Well, that's the question, though, isn't it? Would he have even been the champion if Desperado's knee wasn't shot? If Desperado didn't have to have champion, would he have held the title? Maybe. The answer is maybe. But Dunstan says, I can't think of a big junior title match at Wrestle Kingdom without Despe or Hiromu involved. I like Doki, but I just don't see him at that level yet. The way that this could go is I agree that Desperado will be involved in the title picture at Wrestle Kingdom because he is the ace of that division, with Hiromu busy doing other things at the moment. And either way, the story works for Despe. This could be Show taking the title and Desperado coming back and just saying, we can't have this. I can't have this thing floating around with House of Torture. I have to rescue that title from House of Torture. If Doki beats Show, you have the obvious rematch. You took this thing from me. My knee was hurt. I missed some time, but now I'm back healthy, ready to go again, and I want my shot. And that could be a match between two guys who respect each other, whereas Show versus Despe could be between two guys who absolutely do not. Either way works for Desperado, and they could go either way they want with that at Wrestle Kingdom. If you want Doki to be the ace of the division, he could win. If you want to re-crown Desperado because perhaps maybe you didn't want him to lose the thing in the first place, but his knee had to be fixed, you can reset from there. So, I agree that at Kingdom, Desperado will be heavily involved somewhere in here.
Who's left of the active junior heavyweights as a viable singles challenger for Doki who's not injured? The only one I can think of is Akira.
Yeah, Francesco Akira. It could be.
Maybe Robbie Eagles. But I think Akira is the only guy that Doki needs to go through healthy of the roster. That leaves three guys. That leaves three guys at Wrestle Kingdom that he could face. That's Yo, Desperado, and Wato. And he could face them all in a four-way. And set up drama for the next 4 months after that. So there's a whole lot that they can do. I'm leaning towards Doki. That was the last point I wanted to make. go for it. What do you got?
No, I just think that it's a possibility there that it involved Desperado, but Akira and Robbie Eagles, both of them viable challengers. That one feels more like a power struggle match, one that's on the way to the dome rather than a dome match, so to speak. Right. That feels like a power struggle challenger more than a Tokyo Dome challenger to me. Both those guys there. So,
moving on.
The global heavyweight title. Now, Hirooki Goto, David Finlay. Finlay's the champion. Goto's the challenger. Goto beat Finlay in a tremendous match in Korakuen Hall during the G1 tournament. This is why I feel pretty confident that Finlay's winning this one, because he's going to get his victory back. You could absolutely go with Goto as the sentimental guy and keep the good vibes flowing, so to speak, and just have the happy ending on this one. But then you kind of wonder what you do with Finlay. Finlay, to me, is more effective as the global champion and more effective as a heel global champion. I almost feel like he needs this belt in order to really achieve what they want to achieve with him. And I think there also needs to be some kind of chase going on when they get to the Tokyo Dome. And we mentioned Wrestle Dynasty, when all signs are pointing to a babyface Jay White coming back to try to get the guy who kicked him out of Bullet Club completely. It's too perfect, isn't it? It's just too perfect. And while everybody loves Goto, he got the win at Korakuen. So I feel like this is one where the heel gets it back. And I would be not disappointed, but surprised if Goto won this one.
This all kicked off when Yoshihashi got a surprise pin on David Finlay after the G1, and so we're moving on. I think we are in a situation where Finlay is just going to get elevated among the entire roster to build him up and to really solidify Bullet Club going into 2025. They've had a couple of years of, they've been running the roost, but there's a point that they need to take over. And the Jay White setup, where no one else has been able to take this title off of David Finlay, and so Jay White's going to come in and do it in kind of a surprise return kind of thing. I don't think it's going to happen tonight because he's got the match with Hangman Adam Page at Wrestle Dream in Seattle. But I would not be shocked if we see Jay White either in a video package or actually in Japan doing a face-off in some way, shape, or form, making the intentions known, because Finley's doing a lot of chirping, and one of these guys is going to take action instead of talking at some point.
So this does feel like it's just a way for him to get a heel victory on the way to something.
Yeah, else, so. Goto's a renaissance man. There should be no question about Goto and Yoshihashi in the 2020s and what they've been able to contribute and the level that they've been able to elevate the rest of New Japan Pro Wrestling, because the skill and care that they've had working with the rest of the roster and having, frankly, what some people say, outkicking their coverage, making better matches in scenarios where you weren't expecting much, but you got a great match from this guy every night from the G1. And so he's got that catch-in. He's got that respect that even if, this match somehow, doesn't compete to the one before or after it, no one's going to really think any less of either one of these guys.
And Venkin says, Jay White, after losing leaves Japan match and then the Eddie match, I doubt it. So he doesn't think it's going to be that. He's guessing Finlay versus Naito at the Dome, perhaps. Obviously with the idea of Zack winning.
I got personal skin in the game on this one.
Go ahead.
I was in San Jose for the Eddie Kingston versus Jay White match, in which he left. And Eddie Kingston originally had the marker for whether Jay White could ever return to New Japan. And at some point, a few months later, it was made clear on a broadcast that David Finlay, in fact, held that marker, that Jay White could never return to New Japan. And then, in an interview 2 weeks ago, hyping up this match, David Finlay is talking about Hiroshi Tanahashi's call whether he comes back or not. And the minute he said that it wasn't his call, I was like, oh, this match is happening. It could happen at Wrestle Kingdom. It could happen at Wrestle Dynasty. If it were my guess, I think the singles match happens at Wrestle Kingdom for the global title. And then I think we get a 4-man against 4-man Bullet Club versus Bang Bang Gang at Wrestle Dynasty. Kind of a party match kind of thing where one guy may win, but the other team for the other faction wins kind of thing. And everybody kind of saves face. That's kind of what I think happened, but I do think that it's time to close the chapter on Jay White and David Finlay and give David Finlay that win. Yeah, I said.
Yeah, the whole thing too. It does feel like it. Plus, it's thin. It's thin, but they have an out, which is that. He said he's not. He's loser leaves NJPW and all that, and I know about the loser leaves Japan thing, but they might. They can go back on that a little bit if Tanahashi holds the marker, but they can also have that little storyline out of he's not a New Japan wrestler. He's not coming back to New Japan. He's an AEW guy.
He's at the Tokyo Dome. He's not in New Japan.
yeah, that type of thing. Who knows? But and Dunstan mentions for Dynasty with Jay, yes, but at Wrestle Kingdom, Tsuji seems like the viable option if he's not involved in the main event. It's kind of what I was thinking. It's similar to what I was thinking too. If he also might end up being part of this whole Hiromu, Shingo, Naito thing somewhere in there as well. But Tsuji is not going to be left out of Wrestle Kingdom. He's going to have a prominent spot, and a global title match could be it if he's not involved in some sort of inter-LIJ drama.
I am not opposed to it, but we have gone back to Tsuji versus Finlay multiple times in the past year. I do not think that we would have had that happen many, many times if that was just going to end up being the Wrestle Kingdom match. I think there's something going to be a little bit fresh and different for both of those guys. It was thin at the top this year, frankly. Like, a lot of people ended up facing each other that didn't end up facing each other. For all I know, it could be Naito versus Finlay, like it was mentioned, or it could be Zack Sabre Jr. versus Finlay. I don't think that's going to possibly happen, but it's not something that you can rule out either. Just hypotheticals of if you have Hiromu and Naito at the main event, can you do IWGP, Zack Sabre Jr. and Finlay under that kind of thing? Like there's things, everything is fluid and in motion. So, but the one thing that I don't think is going to happen is a whole lot of matches that we've already had this year that we're going to run back at Wrestle Kingdom.
All right. We're up to the main event.
Hey.
And it is Tetsuya Naito, Zack Sabre Jr. So, we mentioned that it really felt like it's Zack's time. We all have questioned whether Naito's health will allow him to be the world heavyweight champion he wants to be, and the guy that can have those great matches because he has looked pretty unsteady. Looked a little bit better last time out in that match with Great Okan. He was able to do a full Destino, which he wasn't able to do for a few months there. So with him bringing up Shingo and Hiromu and everything else there in the post-match after Great Okan, it planted the seed of doubt. But, again, Zack's coming off a dominant G1 victory. He's hotter than a firecracker right now. It may well be his time, but I am very curious. Sometimes New Japan has a hard time pulling that trigger. They like their safety blankets. They like their go-to guys. And like we've mentioned many times on here, a Tetsuya Naito main event does seem to move the needle ticket selling when it comes to tickets. And that can't be discounted. It's not the be-all and end-all because they have had shows without him on top that have done all right. But this is Wrestle Kingdom. It can't go poorly. Like, they can't allow that. What they don't want to do is have a disappointing crowd for Wrestle Kingdom and have a main event that everyone was like, see, that shouldn't have been the main event. You know what I'm talking about, Jeremy? Like, they can't leave that on the table. They can't leave anything on the table. Naito has to have something big for Wrestle Kingdom. We think there is a way to do it without it involving the World Heavyweight title. But you know how New Japan is sometimes, Jeremy. Sometimes they just can't quite let go in these types of situations. Where's your needle going? Is it pointing toward Naito, or are we indeed pulling the trigger on this being Zack's era?
Everything is telling me that this is a Zack Sabre Jr. victory. But at the same time, I don't know if there's a homerism to that, because I've always just been like, this is the guy, and one day it's going to be his day. And is that his day? You know, it's like when we got to a point where he wasn't going to defend or challenge for the title at Wrestle Kingdom, I got nervous. You know, it was like, why are they straying from the path? And right now, I generally lean towards what's best for business is coming out of this with 2 matches for Wrestle Kingdom that you didn't have before Wrestle Kingdom. Now, is it Hiromu throwing in the towel for Naito when Naito wouldn't give up kind of thing? Mm-hmm. In the scenario, and it's one of those, Naito wouldn't quit even if it was going to kill him, and Hiromu does something to like give up the match for Naito, and that sets up that. And then we have someone else from LIJ setting themselves up for him for Zack Sabre Jr. at Wrestle Kingdom. You know, they had a scenario where there were 4 people at the end of the last show, and Destruction Kobe, and there's an entire possibility that we run that back, or maybe someone from another promotion shows up, and we have that kind of scenario where it's a champion versus champion from like Noah or something like that. Something crazy could happen at the end of this show. Mm. The safest thing and the worst thing that they could do is have Naito retained. You know, like,
yeah, it feels very safe. Yeah,
it shows that like they're ready to hold, and they have an idea up their sleeve that they think is better than anything that they've like gone through. But what a waste of the G1. You know,
no. Yeah.
I just like to go all this way, and then Zack just loses at the King of Pro Wrestling in the middle of October, you know, and it's just like you look like a geek.
They could do it though. Sometimes they get conservative with stuff like this. They really do, especially with foreigners. Here's the other point too. There's another New Japan trope. They don't do it every single time. But that Naito Mistico or Hiromu Mistico match is on this card for a reason. Hiromu Mistico match is on this card for a reason.
Okay.
You see what I'm going with this? Where like if there is a special challenge match that doesn't involve a belt, the winner of that one frequently comes out to challenge someone. Yes. And doesn't necessarily have to be the World Heavyweight Champion. We've seen it where they challenge the Global Champion. We've seen it where they challenge the Never Champion. But again, say... how
do you come out of this show with people talking about it?
Well, and again, that whole thing with Hiromu coming out, it doesn't even have to be for the Dome. There is power struggle still to come, right? That type of thing. So it could be a thing where they want to do that at power struggle, or that there are a lot of options. But I'm just saying that Naito, or excuse, I keep saying that Hiromu Mistico match is there for something. Mm-hmm. Not just to have a great match. They didn't fly him all the way to Japan just to have a great match. Don't get me wrong.
They had the bullet in the chamber for this match, and they're firing it for a reason.
Yeah. And now, doesn't necessarily have to be that. He could step up to Finlay. He could step up to even Shingo or Oiwa if Oiwa wins. You know what I mean? And so there are options here. I'm just saying that Hiromu, that's not the last time we're going to see Hiromu Takahashi that night. That's my prediction there. Yeah. And let's get to some of these comments here because we have some good ones. Dunstan says he's convinced 100% that Zack's going to win. They practically set up 2 challenges for him already. I just don't see him holding it after the Dome. Yeah, because, I mean, at the Dome, he might lose it back. They do like to have the Japanese hero on the microphone at the end. Matthew mentions this is the first time in a long time the main event is a complete toss-up. Kudos to New Japan for keeping us guessing and making the road to the Dome interesting. I completely agree. I think they've done a wonderful job of doing what we just did, spending time examining every single angle of this one. I do think that's smart. Venkin feels like Naito's retaining, but that might be because the challenge is so early because of the Stardom 5-star winners challenge before Queendom, and they lose. Yeah. So he might be a little... you might have some of that Stardom booking leaking in there.
I would say we might end up splitting the difference where Zack Sabre Jr. wins, but Hiromu challenges Naito at the conversation is now like it's clear that Hiromu and Naito are going to be happening. And in an event where Zack Sabre Jr. wins, it just kind of it all orbits each other. You know what I mean? Like it just you need and want attention to be on this angle in some way, shape, or form, and you need to wonder why. And so you're right that Hiromu will be present in some way, shape, or form for that main event. But I also think that Zack Sabre Jr. is winning.
Yeah, and then keep in mind CMLL is part of Wrestle Dynasty, so let's go back to this here where Venkin is saying Mistico could challenge Naito for either Kingdom or Dynasty. That's a possibility. There's going to be some CMLL representation. And USVA guy says, let's say Lowell and Long Beach are going to be fun, he says.
Well, hello, Esteban. I think Mystica. You know, Wrestle Dynasty was a CMLL versus LIJ like party match in the middle of the show. Great. I don't think Naito or Hiromu are going to be in crucial top of the card matches because every time I see those guys with AEW, they are pre-show and or wearing a T-shirt.
I don't know about that, man. The reason I say that, I mean, Wrestle Dynasty, they got to get people to buy tickets to that. You can't just can't put all the big stars in party matches. People aren't.
I think I think that there are a number of matches for Wrestle Dynasty that they have set up. I think Zack Sabre Jr. versus MJF feels like it's 100% happening at Wrestle Dynasty. We have the Finlay and Jay White, some form of it's going to happen there. If I had to guess, I think Takeshita versus Okada is happening at Wrestle Dynasty. And if that match is happening at the Tokyo Dome, that'll sell some tickets. You know, you have Kenny Omega and Tanahashi versus the Young Bucks. This is not a card that I think, like, they are designing matches to happen in Japan.
Maybe some Ospreay in there somewhere.
Ospreay will be in there 1,000%. You know, like, just, you can't be on the Wrestle Kingdom show because they want to keep it separate from the New Japan guys. But if you put those guys on the card and they are not wrestling New Japan guys, but they're still in a New Japan branded show, I think that is the best way to skirt some perception issues. Right? You know, like Okada and Takeshita for the C2 finals for that belt at the Tokyo Dome would make the C2 in AEW feel so much cooler. You have both of them win their block finals at World's End the week before, and then you go straight to Tokyo for the finals with those two guys. It writes itself.
Well, we will have to see how that turns out because there are a lot of chapters to go on this one. So this King of Pro Wrestling is going to tell us a lot. And Matthew says, who could Ospreay wrestle that he hasn't already wrestled in Japan? But you know, but I think that this is a time to bring him back after the year away and things. I'm guessing that he's going to be part of it somewhere.
If I had to guess, I would put Ospreay back with a couple of guys from United Empire and have them wrestle the Callis family, and like have him and Jeff Cobb and Great O'Khan and Hinare versus Will Hobbs and Kyle Fletcher and a couple of these other guys that they have in that family, and just go for it. Lance Archer, whatever it is, just have like I said. You can't have him on Wrestle Kingdom. You can't have Okada on Wrestle Kingdom.
I want to mention this too. You got to remember, Wrestle Dynasty. This isn't Forbidden Door. This is a New Japan show, and the people from the other promotions are guests. So that's another way to look at that too. That's why Okada and Takeshita is kind of an AEW match now, which is why I'm not sure that that's how it's going to play out on that one, but it's possible. But yeah, it's a possibility. I would love to see Takeshita back, just because he was so damn good in the G1. Good Lord. But it is. And he says, and Tony doesn't have as much power here as he does in America, unless a power struggle occurs.
Good.
Pardon the pun, but it's there. This match, while Forbidden Door is there to serve AEW, with New Japan talent on hit, this feels like the other way around. That this is AEW talent coming in to help serve New Japan interest. So that's
absolutely.
Yeah. And
all
that's
right.
yeah.
So again,
I think Jeremy might have frozen on us there a little bit. So we'll continue on here for a little bit. Wanted to mention that we are, I want to mention something that's a little bit difficult to talk about here. Our sibling show, Power Bombshells, they didn't have a show last week. Sam is going through some health issues. She's been open about it on her social media and things. And all of us here wish nothing but the best for Sam, Mel, the whole Power Bombshells family there as they go through a pretty difficult time with surgery and Sam's health scare. But it sounds like from her post that the doctors are on it. And that she's they're doing everything they can. She's doing everything they can. So we wish Sam the best of luck as she goes through this tough time. So everybody here, speaking of strong styles, thinking of the folks at the Power Bombshells there and rooting for her. So
yeah, we love Sam and Mel. They're great.
Yeah, we really do.
They took a week off. They're about to back this next week. Sometimes I just want to take a week off. You know what I mean? Like it's a good thing to do. But they didn't want to. They decided it was in their best interest. They'll be back this next week. We love them. We wish them nothing but the best. What else? I'm going to miss you next week.
Yeah, you can tell everybody who's going to be joining us. I'm going to be away. This was something that was planned before I knew that King of Pro Wrestling was going to be this same time.
A mysterious stranger came with a briefcase and gave Steven Conway an opportunity. He could not refuse.
No, I couldn't.
And it was so far in the past that he just didn't know that he was going to miss so much wrestling.
The pivotal show on the way to the Dome. But I will catch it as soon as I am back in range. But
we'll have Scott E Wrestling, and then you'll be back in 2 weeks. In the meantime, you will give us as much Tanahashi history as you can possibly fit in the rest of this episode, and then we'll pick it up again in 2 weeks.
All right, so we're coming toward the end of this stuff with Tanahashi here. Again, it's 25th anniversary of being a pro wrestler. That was very, very recently. But when we left off, we were headed toward Wrestle Kingdom number 8. And at that time, Shinsuke Nakamura was the Intercontinental Champion, and he was making that title his own. He really took that and ran with it and established it. He may have been the leader of Chaos, or was that Okada? It's hard to tell back then. They were kind of co-leaders. Okada was the World Heavyweight Champion, of course, but Nakamura was the charismatic king of New Japan at that time. And Nakamura, the Intercontinental Champion, was facing the ace of the entire company. Tanahashi had challenged and lost to Okada, so he just said, well, I'm not going to interrupt this reign anymore. You got me, so I will not challenge Okada for that belt as long as he's holding it. That would be a key thing. And he did say that. This was not a whole, I'll never challenge again. He just said, I'm not going to challenge Okada during this reign. He has turned me away, and on my honor, I will not challenge for him again. So that left Tanahashi with something to do, with nothing to do, rather, which was filled by Nakamura, who said, well, hey, this Intercontinental title means the world to me. Why don't you take a shot at it? I'll beat you. So, we go into Wrestle Kingdom. Tetsuya Naito has won the G1. But the fans aren't that into him. He's a baby face, but they're not really cheering him. The fans of Osaka have flat out turned on him. They've always been a little bit defiant anyway. But you have the World Heavyweight Champion facing the G1 winner. You have the most charismatic guy in the company facing the ace of the company. What exactly is the main event of Wrestle Kingdom 8? Well, they had a fan vote, and they received word from the fans that the fans knew exactly what the main event was. And the main event was Nakamura versus Tanahashi. So the World Heavyweight title, Okada versus the G1 winner, went on second to last. It was the semifinal. And the Intercontinental title match closed the show. Both those matches were excellent, by the way. And in that one, Tanahashi defeated Nakamura in the main event to win the Intercontinental title for the very first time. This fulfilled his quest there that he was going to go and get that belt he was going to win that title. This is the only one he really hadn't won. Attendance was 35,000 for this one. So in a few years of Tanahashi's 5 match Wrestle Kingdom win streak. They had effectively doubled the attendance at Wrestle Kingdom. So this was his 5th win in a row at Kingdom. Not all of them were main events, but a lot of them were. Most of them were. And Nakamura wanted to go back after that title. So he further established it by winning the New Japan Cup, and then he challenged for the Intercontinental title instead of the World Championship. So Nakamura, again, putting over that Intercontinental title, saying that's more important to me than the World title right now. I'm not going to challenge my my Chaos teammate. I'm going to go after that Intercontinental belt again. And this was a period when you could really make the case that they were 1A and 1B as far as the belts in New Japan go. Now, Okada, I mentioned, retained the title against Naito at Wrestle Kingdom 8. It didn't happen right away, but this was when the decision was made that things aren't clicking with Tetsuya Naito, that he needs a little bit of a change of scenery. He needs a little change of attitude. So in the first half of that year, and it didn't happen immediately after Wrestle Kingdom, but that's when Tetsuya Naito went back to Mexico for a little bit of a run over there, where he joined up with the guy now known as Andrade and Rush and all that guys, La Sombra, and became one of the Ingobernables in CMLL. And of course, he would come back with that all new attitude instead of being, bright-eyed and getting the fans into it. And by God, we're all going to rally together and be good guys and take pictures with everybody's babies. That's when he walked down to the ring and took 20 minutes to get there, took another 20 minutes to get his gear off, didn't care what the fans think of him, basically told him to screw off and told the company to screw off. And we got the LIJ Naito. As it turns out, also, Bushi ended up going with him. That was a longtime ally of Naito as a babyface. And Bushi was the first guy to join up with Tetsuya when he came back. So that Wrestle Kingdom 8, where Tanahashi ended up being a big part of the fans turning away from Naito and saying, you're not really a main event guy, dude. Sorry. We want to see Tanahashi in the main event. We want to see Nakamura in the main event. It's part of the reason we have the Naito we have today, because they just decided, well, now is the time to put a little edge on the guy. So that happened over the course of the next few months. In the meantime, Tanahashi was defending his new Intercontinental title. So, but I mentioned that Nakamura won the New Japan Cup and challenged him for it. Well, in April, Nakamura regained that title, and Tanahashi was title-less again. In May of 2013, with Naito kind of out of the picture for the moment and all of that, there was a new Bullet Club leader, and that was AJ Styles. And he won the IWGP title from Okada. That thus ended the reign that Tanahashi swore he would not challenge for again. So that allowed Tanahashi to just say, okay, Okada's done. I can go ahead and challenge for the IWGP title again. He didn't have the Intercontinental title anymore. AJ Styles, this new heel version of him, was the IWGP champion. So he had a number one contenders match essentially with Katsuyori Shibata, and that put Tanahashi back in the driver's seat toward a major title. So the G1 that year, Okada and Nakamura went to the finals, and they had an absolute classic match, one of the best ones I've seen in New Japan, at the Seibu Dome baseball stadium to determine the champion. That's also a really cool looking building. So not only was it an amazing match, but it had a really cool atmosphere, this partially outdoor but domed stadium. And if you ever get a chance to see it, and then on the NJPW Pro Wrestling Returns show, remember the old show on Axis they used to have? Mauro Ranallo was on the call of that one. He was brilliant on that one. It was just a little bit of alchemy there. Mauro Ranallo calling this classic match between Okada and Nakamura. But Okada won the G1 there. So these two were on a collision course again. We go to King of Pro Wrestling. That's the show that we just previewed. Well, the King of Pro Wrestling that year, Tanahashi got the shot at AJ Styles before Okada did. So that was the whole point where Okada now has this contract for Wrestle Kingdom, but he has to defend it. He has to defend that contract like a belt all the way up until the Dome. Tanahashi got the number one contender shot because he beat Katsuyori Shibata. So Tanahashi got the shot before the G1 winner did. He beat AJ Styles to regain the IWGP title for the 7th time. And that's what brought Okada and Tanahashi back together at Wrestle Kingdom 9. And this was, excuse me, I misspoke earlier. I said that was his 5th in a row. That was his 4th Wrestle Kingdom win in a row. Wrestle Kingdom 9 was his 5th. And that's when he defeated Okada. I know it. That's where he defeated Okada to retain his title. And that was in front of 36,000. So again, we're starting to reach kind of the limit here, but 36,000 people were at that show. And that was the one where Okada famously left the ring in tears. He had gotten wins over Tanahashi before, but he got upended at Wrestle Kingdom once again by Tanahashi. And that was Tanahashi got on the microphone and said, "Hey, you've got a long way to go before you're the ace of this company." And Okada was crying on the way out. The semifinal that night was another classic, Nakamura and Kota Ibushi in a wonderful match. Nakamura got the win in that one, and it was really great. And one is the Wrestle Kingdom 8, Wrestle Kingdom 9. Those are some of the better top to bottom in-ring shows you're ever going to see. These are just wonderful. For some other context, Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly won the junior tag titles, and Kenny Omega beat Ryusuke Taguchi for the junior title on that card. Omega is still wrestling as a junior heavyweight, and underneath AJ Styles in the pecking order, so to speak. That title reign for Tanahashi wasn't very long, though. They wanted the happy ending at Wrestle Kingdom, but they had other plans for it after that. So Tanahashi lost it again to Styles in February at New Beginning in Osaka. So this was kind of a thing where they switched it off of Styles and put it on Tanahashi so that they could do Tanahashi Okada, the two huge names. They had Ibushi and Nakamura underneath it. Got that happy ending. Tanahashi did the whole air guitar thing on the way out, and everybody left happy. And it worked, right? 36,000 people. But after that, they had stories to tell. He lost it to Styles in February at New Beginning. He spent a few more months feuding with Toru Yano again. Yano bounced him out of the New Japan Cup early. So after he lost to Styles in February, he goes to the March single elimination tournament and says, "I'm going to win this thing, and I'm going right back after AJ Styles for that title." Well, Yano got him out very quickly, very early in the tournament. A classic Yano little, low blow, roll up type of win. So now he's pissed at Yano again. So it's kind of funny. We've mentioned this, that we don't think of them as a huge grudge rivalry, but in two different instances, Yano and Tanahashi were absolutely at each other's throats, which, leads this whole Bebop tag team thing to be a little bit more amusing when you think about how these guys went to war a few times over the years. So he feuded with Yano. They went all the way to Dominion. He got the win over Yano, Tanahashi did, and then he could move on to the G1. And also at Dominion, by the way, Okada got the IWGP title from AJ. So again, AJ had a couple of reigns with the IWGP title, but they never lasted tremendously long. Only a few months at a time. He never really made it around to Wrestle Kingdom again with the belt, that type of thing. But again, they wanted those Japanese stars in the main events of Kingdom. And can't say they were wrong. Again, they were getting some of their best crowds in years. I also want to mention that Sho and Yo were in the Young Lions match. I like to kind of contextualize that to see the guys that we think of as stars now and where they were at the time. So that was an interesting note. We move on to the G1 climax. Again, Tanahashi won the A block with 14 points. Nakamura and Okada tied with 14 points in block B. Okada went into the tournament as champion, but Nakamura won their block match. So classic New Japan booking where the champion gets an inch away, but somebody upends him. And Nakamura won the tiebreaker. So it was Tanahashi versus Nakamura for the G1 championship that year. And Tanahashi was victorious to win his second G1 climax. Okada's a champion. Tanahashi just won the G1. We're back on that same collision course again. They drew 36,000 last year, so we're ready to go right back to it. He had lost to Tetsuya Naito and Bad Luck Fale during the G1. Tanahashi did. So those were his title defense contracts as they headed back to Wrestle Kingdom there. With that in mind, he won both of those, and Okada continued to hold on to the IWGP title. So they squared off again at Wrestle Kingdom 10. This is the time when Okada was able to finally overcome Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom and hold on to the title, winning a classic. Again, this is when Tanahashi was still absolutely one of the best wrestlers in the world. Okada was one of the best wrestlers in the world. Nakamura was. Ibushi was healthy and can do anything. Naito was still healthy and can do anything. The main events during this period of New Japan Pro Wrestling were absolutely spectacular. And down lower on the card, you had guys like Omega in the junior heavyweight matches. And you had some great tag team stuff like Red Dragon and the like. So if you want to go back and watch some of those Wrestle Kingdoms or Dominions and things, it will amaze you what the quality of in-ring product was during this run. And Tanahashi was probably the number one guy in it. You could say that it was Okada. But at Wrestle Kingdom 10, Okada beat him, held onto the title, and Tanahashi would never quite be at Okada's level again. This was Okada ascending to a plane just a touch higher. It's not that Tanahashi would never defeat him again. But if you look back at this, after Wrestle Kingdom 10, it was always Okada on a higher level than Tanahashi, and he might get a win in a G1 or something like that. But most of the time, it was Okada hitting the Rainmaker and beating him after this. It was a true passing of the torch moment in a way that we don't often see as cleanly as this, where Tanahashi took half a step back and was never really able to beat Okada again, although he would hold the title again. It should be noted, by the way, that Wrestle Kingdom win streak ended and attendance was down to 25,000. It dropped a little bit for that rematch. So when Okada beat him, going back to the same match as the main event didn't quite work the way they were hoping it would. Didn't quite work the way they were hoping it would. Still drew 25,000. Also on that card, Katsuyori Shibata won the never openweight title from Tomohiro Ishii, and Nakamura beat AJ Styles in the semifinal. This day was more significant because it came out that Nakamura, AJ Styles, Carl Anderson, and Doc Gallows all gave their notice to New Japan that they were going to be moving to WWE within the month. Remember, by the end of the month, AJ Styles had already appeared at the Royal Rumble, and Nakamura at the very beginning of February would face Sami Zayn up in Dallas at an NXT takeover.
I went there.
You were there
that year. I went to that one.
Man, I didn't get to go to that one. It was just a few hours for me. I couldn't quite.
That was the takeover for Mania weekend, Dallas, WrestleMania 32.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. It was the. Excuse me. He didn't debut for NXT until then. He joined WWE in February. It was the
teaser
end of
started at March. He joined in February. He debuted because he did press photos with Triple H at the time. Like there were photos taken when he joined.
USVA guy says numbers were padded for Wrestle Kingdom 8 and 9. I'm just kind of going with what was reported there. The Observer had it as about that much. So we'll see. But I'm not saying wrestling companies don't pad attendance. Good luck.
Weird. 78,000, 93,000.
Who would ever 93,000? 93,000 was a joke then. Anyway, at this stage, Nakamura is gone. Tanahashi has now put Okada over. You think about what this is like for Okada. So he went from being kind of the co-leader of Chaos and the guy who was fighting tooth and nail with Tanahashi. All of a sudden, they do this passing of the torch thing, which was designed to be in the first place. We're going to go with Okada as the number one guy. Well, not only does that happen, but the same night that happens, Nakamura gives his notice. Like he doesn't have a rival anymore as far as being the number one dude in the company. They're all gone now. So we're going to have to build some new guys up for Okada right here. And he became the true ace of the company going forward, even though the nickname stayed with Tanahashi. Tanahashi would be back, though. And we will look at his career after this passing of the torch in a future episode because, remember, he still has a G1 and another IWGP title run left in him. But after Wrestle Kingdom 10, there could be absolutely no doubt who the number one guy in the company was. It was Kazuchika Okada. And Tanahashi and his rivalry with Okada was a huge part of why. And I'm not saying that Tanahashi solely made Kazuchika Okada because Okada had great matches against everybody, but it was probably his career-defining rivalry. I mean, I think when Okada retires, whenever that is, and hopefully it's not for a long time, I think people look back and just say Okada Tanahashi. That every single time they wrestled each other, it was an important event. And that was how Tanahashi pretty much made Okada into the ace. And then the decks were clear for him when two other guys who had held the IWGP title bolted for Connecticut after that. Can you imagine, by the way, as we start to wrap things up here, being the president of New Japan, which was not yet Tanahashi, but the head booker, Geto, finding out all of these guys are leaving in a month. All of them.
That's a well-fucked moment.
What a rotten day, really, considering they were just having Wrestle Kingdom and all this stuff. Just finding out that all that talent was heading out, because Gallows and Anderson were over in New Japan, far better than they've been in WWE.
Sure.
But they were over in New Japan. They were a regular, huh?
I said not great.
Yeah, I mean that was a rough blow for them, and then to hear AJ and Nakamura and all that. Oh boy, I bet he had some indigestion after all that. Just thinking like, man, he probably had to tear up everything he'd planned for the next 6 months, and because they had to do the thing the next night at New Year's Dash where Kenny Omega ascended to the top of Bullet Club by kicking out AJ, and I'm not sure they knew they were going to have to do that.
Yeah. They've had moments like that. They'll have a few more in 2018, 2019, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, and a few more not all that long ago.
Yeah. So Matthew had a comment here that King of Pro Wrestling is always on Columbus Day in the U.S. There are shows that are on Columbus Day, but that's not necessarily true that it's the King of Pro Wrestling. Well, I checked, and the last time that they had a King of Pro Wrestling was in 2019, but it was at the same weekend that we're having now. 2020 was a G1 because it was all super weird. There were Battle Autumn pre-shows going on in 21. There was Power Struggle in 2022, and then Destruction Ryogoku was last year. And then they did Rev Pro. They did not Rev Pro, but ROH Wars in 2018. So there's always something here, but King of Pro Wrestling may hopefully be the tradition here on out.
Yeah, and like I said, they've done something for Sports Day, which is the October bank holiday in Japan, and that seems to be where a show always lands for New Japan. It might not always be King of Pro Wrestling, but it seems like they always make sure they get an event going for that weekend. So makes sense. It's a good time to do it.
Yeah, couple last little plugs for me. Did some writing for the Fight Game Media Network website about New Japan. Interesting news and notes, and we'll just be putting some stuff out every couple of days with that. And if you're interested, we'll be doing a Wrestle Dream pay-per-view recap on Saturday night. Myself and Kevin Ely from The Boom are going to be talking all the AEW that you can handle if you are in a fit for talking wrestling before the King of Pro Wrestling next week.
All right. So we, Scott and Jeremy will be back next week to discuss KOPW, look forward to other events and any aftermath. Royal Quest is coming right on the heels of that. And then in 2 weeks, I will be back, and it'll be, it's looking a little different around here. Just a full disclosure, we're in the process of moving. So getting a different house, staying in the same town, but moving.
I need you to green screen a picture from your cruise as your backdrop in 2 weeks. Take one of those photos that just completely ridiculous and just have it as your background. Yeah. Figure it out, put it as your digital background for 1 week, and just go for it.
Oh, I don't do that stuff. I'm gonna say, but
hey, you're moving. You may be compromising immensely given the fact that you're moving over the next couple of weeks.
I'll be back here. It'll still be in this room in 2 weeks. That's still. And then USVA guy, do you think Tony flies out Inoki relatives for Wrestle Dream?
No. Whoa. There's not been a single Inoki mention. That was a nice marketing maneuver last year, but I don't see any New Japan, Inoki, anything, unless you want to just, tokenize Shibata versus Jack Perry, which you could, in all honesty. But I don't. Okada's not even on the card at this point. What are we doing here?
All right. So with that in mind, we will be back next week, Jeremy and Scott, and enjoy King of Pro Wrestling. This should be a really interesting show, and top to bottom, there should be a lot of good matches. So we hope you enjoy your weekend and enjoy that show, and we will be back to talk about it here at Speaking of Strong Style at our regular time. You and Scott are going at the usual time. So for Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. Thank you very much for spending your time with us, and we will talk to you again real soon.